Welcome back to another episode of the St. Louis podcast. As always, thank you for tuning in. Please like, review, subscribe, blah, 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 all the good stuff to show your support. Today, we have a lot to talk about. There's a lot in the news. There's a lot that's happened in the last week. There's a lot that's happened really in the last month that I really wasn't able to talk a lot about, and I still don't want to, but we'll see if we'll highlight a few of those topics here as well. But there's a few things that I really want to talk about. Number one is the Texas floods, and I want to go into some of the details of it, why I see some issues just from a standpoint of, some of these camps that are just in the middle of flood zones. And if they don't have some sort of prepared readiness for torrential downfall, it's going to lead to terrible events like this. So, obviously, we've had, flash floods struck it July 4th, and I think it was actually over the night, with a death toll of at least 108, including 28 children and counselors at Camp Mystic, a Christian girls' summer camp in Kure County. The floods, of course, were driven by an unprecedented deluge of rain, and it's raised significant concerns about the safety of summer camps located in flood-prone areas along the Guadalupe River. And really, we should probably take a look at this in any flash flood areas in the United States that, we have camps and things on, that have the ability to, if they're in those locations that can warrant something like this happening. And the percentage of something like this happening is very low, but regardless, we'd like to not see a loss of human life. We should probably take a look at all of these locations and have some sort of emergency preparedness plan set up so we can ensure this type of stuff doesn't happen, of course, in the future. And so they found a lack of, adequate preventative measures. And I'll see, I'm sure we'll see over the next coming, weeks and months, where the breakdown potentially occurred. Of course, this happened overnight. It was dark. People were sleeping. That causes other concern. And I see people online blaming the children. I'm like, it's not their fault. The people that are in charge of running said camp, the adults, they're the ones to blame here. And of course, some of them lost their lives as well. So, flash floods began early on July 4th, with torrential rain up to 15 inches in some areas, equivalent to a summer's worth, fell in just a few hours across Texas Hill country, particularly in Kure County. The Guadalupe River rose 26 feet in 45 minutes and 33 feet in 2 hours. I'm sure a lot of you have seen those videos online. And all I can say is you're not going to beat the rushing flow of water. I forgot who did that online that showed just a couple square feet of water. Maybe not square feet, whatever it is. A very small amount of moving water is essentially impossible to manage. And so you find yourself stuck in the middle of this rising river. I mean, you don't have much time, and some of these people were sleeping, and I'm assuming most of these people were sleeping. Essentially you wake up and it's too late. So this surpassed the record set during the 1987 Guadalupe River flood. Kure County reported the highest level of fatalities with 87 deaths, 56 adults and 31 children, including 28 from Camp Mystic as of July 28th, 2025. So as of today that we're recording this, of course, 23 people are still missing, including 10 campers and one counselor from Camp Mystic. Other counties such as Travis, Burnett, Kendall, Tom Green, and Williamson reported additional deaths, bringing the statewide toll to at least 108. It's terrible. The floods swept away homes. I'm sure you saw some of the photos of homes just sitting in the middle of roads, vehicles, and infrastructure, with losses estimated to be around $20 billion. Over 850 people were rescued, including 237 by helicopter, with Texas National Guard, Coast Guard, and other local teams using drones, boats, and helicopters. Governor Greg Abbott declared a statewide disaster. President Donald Trump approved federal aid on July 6th. Of course, search and rescue efforts are continuing. Uh, so kind of talk about some of the geographical risks, historical context, and some of the things that really, because Camp Mystic was obviously um, the most detrimental damage and issue here. Um, all right, so let's look at it. So it's a 99-year-old Christian summer camp for girls. The camp hosting 750 campers lost 27 children and counselors, um, including the owner. So the owner was actually perished in this, which is terrible. Counselor and campers. Um, and there were stories of counselors evacuating campers through windows and to higher ground. Obviously, though, some were, of course, swept away. So the location of several summer camps, including Camp Mystic and Camp La Junta, I'm sure I butchered that, in flood-prone areas along the Guadalupe River has been a focal point of criticism. FEMA flood mapping and historical data highlight significant risks that were not adequately addressed. Camp Mystic is situated at the confluence of the South Fork Guadalupe River and Cypress Creek, a known high-risk flood zone. FEMA maps designate much of the camp's property, including dormitories, as within special flood hazard areas, with a 1% annual chance of flooding, a 1 in 100-year event. The camp's proximity to the river, combined with low-lying buildings, made it highly susceptible to the rapid 26-foot rise of the river on July 4th. In 1987, of course, on that Guadalupe River flood, it killed 10 teenagers from a church camp near Comfort, Texas, and it's, continues to highlight the river's history of deadly flooding. Despite this, Camp Mystic's infrastructure remained in high-risk zones with no significant relocation or elevation of critical facilities. Survivors and local residents like Kathy Perkins expressed anger at the lack of preparedness, noting that the camp's location made it a nightmare when floodwaters struck. Social media posts on X echoed the same sentiment, calling the tragedy senseless and avoidable due to the camp's known vulnerability. The thing is, you thinking about it from a parent's standpoint. I mean, are you looking that kind of stuff up? Would most people even know that that's an issue, that's a flood issue? I mean, maybe if you're from those parts or right around there, but I feel like most people, it's a camp. My kid wants to go there, or they need something to do this summer. Let's send them. Other camps in flood zones, of course, Camp La Junta as well, located 10 minutes north on the South Fork. This boys' camp also overlaps with FEMA designated flood zones. Though some buildings are in lower risk areas, all campers were safely evacuated to higher ground, but 14-year-old camper Wyndham Etheridge described climbing into a cabin loft to escape rising waters, indicating the camp's exposure to flood risks. Camps like Waldemar and Hardo Mills also have portions of their property in flood-prone areas. While Camp Waldemar successfully evacuated campers, Hardo Hills director Jane Ragsdale died, though no campers were present. The prevalence of camps in these zones reflects a regional pattern of development along the scenic but dangerous Guadalupe River. So, systemic issues. What do we got here? What do we need to look at? Questions have been raised about whether Kerr County's floodplain administrator and commissioners adhere to FEMA regulations, which restrict development in high-risk zones. The Guardian reported potential skirting of these rules, contributing to the vulnerability of camps and nearby homes. Experts like AccuWeather's Brett Anderson noted, that a warmer atmosphere holds more moisture, increasing the frequency and intensity of extreme rainfall events. Central Texas's bone-dry soils, due to the ongoing drought, exasperated runoff as it could not absorb the deluge, underscores the growing risk to camps in historical flood-prone areas. So I've been to some areas in Arizona, north of Sedona, and Oak Creek Canyon to alert residents and visitors of potential emergencies like flash floods and wildfires. So I don't know if this is, one of the only places that has this, but Oak Creek Canyon siren system, um, this is one area that, I think could use, obviously, a lot of, work in some of these areas, and, of course, I talked about, I don't what has it already been a month or 2 since the tornado here in St. Louis, but there are emergency warning systems instead of having to rely, say, on the tornado warning system like text message alerts and alerts that you can sign up to, through different apps and things like that. That way you can always make sure you're staying prepared and know what is going on in your area in the event of, dangerous weather, right? So, uh, Kerr County lacked a comprehensive flood warning system such as sirens, which could have provided critical minutes for evacuation. I mean, really, all they needed was a couple minutes more time, and I think this would have been a way different story. Um, and I'm also glad that they were able to get up and get out because it could have been a way worse story as well. Um, Judge Rob Kelly admitted that a proposed siren system was rejected due to cost, despite the area's history of flooding. There you go. The National Weather Service issued a flood watch on Thursday's afternoon and a warning after midnight, but many residents and camp staff were asleep and did not receive alerts. There we go. Solution: install countywide siren system as advocated by local resident Nicole Williams's petition to alert camps and residents of imminent flooding. Real-time river gauges and automated phone alerts could have ensured broader dissemination, especially for camps hosting hundreds of children. Other camps like Adirondack Camp in New York use real-time weather alerts to stay ahead of storms, a model Camp Mystic could have adopted. And I feel like, I'm an Eagle Scout, and I'm sure I've talked about that quite a bit on this podcast. Um, if there was weather, an alert, dangerous weather, there was always people at these camps that, regardless of the time of day, that they were paying attention to this stuff. And we knew that, ahead of time if we had to go, get into a structure or whatever, type of issue that we're having. I never had the issue of being caught up in, some sort of dangerous weather where, a tornado just came through. All of a sudden it just starts hailing and, thunderstorming. And I'm just caught out in the middle of nowhere. So Camp Mystic's response was reactive, with counselors are heroically evacuating campers through windows into higher ground after floodwater struck. In contrast, Presbyterian Mo Ranch Assembly, located on higher ground, evacuated 70 people by 1 a.m. on July 4th after monitoring weather reports, suffering no losses. Kerr County officials face criticism for not ordering preemptive evacuation, citing the risk of vehicles being swept away, but this left camps like Mystic unprepared. A potential solution for this is camps in flood zone areas should have mandated evacuation protocols triggered by National Weather Service flood watches. Of course, this would have them relocate campers to higher ground. Mo Ranch's success demonstrates the value of proactive monitoring and swift action. FEMA flood maps clearly identified Cap Mystic's low-lying dormitories as high risk, yet no significant infrastructure changes were made since the 1987 flood. The camp's location at a river confluence amplified its vulnerability. Of course, confluence, two rivers, or a river and a creek or whatever, joining together. Solution: relocate critical facilities to higher ground or outside FEMA flood zones, as seen with Camp Balcone Springs, located on a hill 100 miles from Mystic, which reported no flood risk. Alternatively, elevate buildings on stilts or reinforce them against floodwaters, as recommended by the American Camp Association. Of course, they could have improved coordination with emergency services. So there was there was the absence of direct communication with Kerr County's officials. The city manager, Dalton Rice, noted that the focus was on rescue, not preemptive warnings. And Judge Kelly claimed nobody saw this coming, despite multiple National Weather Service alerts. And then, of course, we need more oversight. We need to enforce stricter floodplain development regulations, requiring camps to conduct flood risk assessments and obtain permits only for safe locations. Sounds like they're going to get this done through community advocacy, which we should. And we need to hold all of these people accountable. So, terrible tragedy. There's a lot that could be taken away from it from a standpoint of just, you know, terrible situation, an absolute ton of rain, 15 inches, in a couple of hours. It's just going to create absolute nightmares. And these camps, some of these camps were just not prepared, resulted in a loss of life with children, which makes it even worse. A lot of other news. Lot of other news. Did want to talk about Xbox here for a second, just because, of course, I game a little bit, and I found this story interesting because a lot of Microsoft Xbox, of course, they just had sweeping cuts across their gaming division. On July 2nd, Microsoft announced layoffs affecting approximately 9,000 employees worldwide, representing about 4% of its workforce. The Xbox gaming division was hit particularly hard with significant job cuts at studios like Turn 10, which, of course, is responsible for Forza Motorsport, nearly 50% of their staff. Raven Software, which is responsible for Call of Duty. Rare, which is responsible for Sea of Thieves. King, which is responsible for Candy Crush. They lost about 10% of their workforce, or 200 jobs. And then ZeniMax Media, Elder Scrolls Online. Entire studios such as The Initiative were closed, and several projects were canceled, including Perfect Dark, Everwild, and an unannounced ZeniMax Online MMORPG. Romero's Games new shooter. Microsoft Gaming CEO Phil Spencer stated the cuts were necessary for enduring success, while Xbox President Mr. Booty emphasized that over 40 projects remain in development. This marks Microsoft's fourth major layoff round in its gaming division since January of 2024, totaling over 8,000 job cuts. The layoffs follow Microsoft's $69 billion acquisition of Activision Blizzard, raising questions about the sustainability of Xbox Game Pass model, which Arcane Studios founder Ralph Colantioni criticizes hurting game sales. Microsoft stock dipped slightly but remains near record highs, reflecting its status as the world's second most valuable company behind NVIDIA. However, the cuts have sparked industry backlash, with an Xbox producer suggestion to use AI chatbots for job loss supporting, or excuse me, let's take that back. The cuts have sparked industry backlash, with an Xbox producer's suggestion to use AI chatbots for job loss support, drawing criticism. So he's like, just use AI chatbots. And this isn't the first thing to obviously happen in the gaming industry. There's been wide layoffs across the board over, the last year and a half to 2 years. I think a lot of that just has to do with the massive amount of people that they hired during COVID, because there was a lot of money injected into the economy and a lot of people were sitting at home, so they had more time to game. Now you got less time to game, and they probably honestly just hired too many people to begin with at that time. This comes at a time where there is massive backlash at new games coming out currently, with the issues facing a ton of things in the gaming industry. So we'll see. We'll see where this ends up. I will say that Forza Motorsport, I'm surprised they lost 50% of their staff, but at the same time, newest Forza Motorsport was fine. And when's the last time we had a Forza Horizon game? 2021. So we're due for Forza Horizon 6. Release date next year. So obviously they didn't need all the workforce that they have over there to make Forza Horizon 6. It's a great game. Love that game. All right. A few other things to talk about here today. Let's talk about the U.S. economic growth. Federal Reserve signals caution. Of course, on July 3rd, the Federal Reserve reported that the U.S. economic growth slowed in Q2 2025. The GDP growth revised to 2.1% annually, down from 2.8 in Q1. Inflation remains above the 2% target at 2.9%, prompting caution on interest rate cuts. Jobless claims rose slightly to 240,000 for the week ending June 28th, signaling a cooling labor market. These factors have fueled debates about potential recession risks. I think everyone's been talking about that for, 2 years now. I'm surprised that somehow that hasn't happened. I think when it comes to the economy, we kick the can down the road as far as we can until we're in a situation where we almost have to have a recession because we put ourselves there in the first place. The slowdown has raised concerns among economists, with some pointing to high borrowing costs and reduced consumer spending. Political reactions vary, with, of course, Democrats emphasizing job creation under Biden's policies and Republicans blaming excessive government spending. Meanwhile, we just had the big, beautiful bill, I believe, pass, which is excessive government spending. The Fed's cautious stance could affect markets and small business. So, why is it relevant? Why do we care? We're looking at really broader financial trends, especially looking at what I've, just talked about with Microsoft Xbox and what I've talked about on this podcast for over the last year and a half on all of these companies continuing to slim their workforce. And I've also talked about how, apparently the unemployment is still very low. But if you look at the number of people that should be in the workforce that just aren't, we have a ton of people that are just actively not looking and actively not working. So they're not even, of course, a part of that percentage when we're looking at unemployment rates, right? All right. And of course, with the economic news, going back and looking at, Xbox, the closer, when it comes to like studios and projects for some of those listeners that do care right now, the closure of the initiative and cancellations of high profile games like Perfect Dark and Everwild have shocked fans as these were showcased as Xbox exclusives. Turn 10's nearly 50% staff cut and Raven software layoffs impact ongoing franchises like Forza and Call of Duty. Developer and fans on X expressed dismay, with some calling for boycotts. Former Arcane president Raphael Collant criticized Game Pass, suggesting it undermines Xbox's viability. So it seems like everyone is attacking Game Pass right now, which some months is good, some months is okay. But I will say we do get a lot of games that we can play. So I'm sure there's some undermining, undergoing market forces that, obviously Xbox wants everyone to be paying subscription fees, but at what cost to these studios themselves, right? And it seems like it is directly affecting these studios. So Phil Spencer and Matt Booty framed the cuts as strategic, citing a need to align with market dynamics and focused on AI and cloud gaming. Critics argue Microsoft acquisitions have led to mismanagement. And of course, we just talked about that with Activision Blizzard. The story provides ample, uh, on layoffs, corporate strategy, gaming industry's future. So we'll see we'll see what happens here in the near future with the economy and where things are heading. I'm pulling together some stuff. I was trying to find the article for the big, beautiful bill I wanted to talk about. So looking for that right now. What else do we have? Should we talk about Ukraine? Do we want to? I know that there was some stuff going down in France. So let's talk about France because I'm sure a lot of you don't know about this. On July 7th, so on Monday, July 7th, France's government, led by Prime Minister Gabriel Attal, faced a no confidence vote after hung parliament emerged from snap elections. The left wing New Popular Front and far right National Rally gained seats, but no party secured a majority. President Emmanuel Macron centrist coalition lost significant ground, fueling political instability. The vote's outcome could trigger a new government or prolonged gridlock. France's political crisis has spooked European markets, with the euro dipping 0.3% against the dollar. The instability threatens France's ability to address budget deficits and host the 2026 Winter Games. Public protests in Paris have highlighted voter frustration, with 62% of French citizens dissatisfied with Macron's leadership per a July 5th poll. It's quite a bit. So we got political turmoil. We got economic turmoil. Of course, we got the Ukraine-Russia situation still going on. On July 6th, Ukraine reported repelling a massive Russian drone attack targeting Kyiv, with 58 of 67 drones shot down. Russia claimed the strikes hit Ukrainian military infrastructure, while Ukraine reported civilian injuries and damage to residential areas. Separately, Russia's defense ministry said it downed 36 Ukrainian drones over Rostov on July 5th. The escalation obviously follows Ukraine's use of U.S.-supplied ATACMS missiles, prompting Russian warnings of retaliation. The war is now in its third year, continues to strain global energy markets and food supplies, contributing to economic uncertainty. NATO's increased support for Ukraine, including $43 billion in aid pledged on July 4th, has heightened tensions with Russia. So keep giving them money, because we know we're going to make trillions at the end of this when it's destroyed. Public sentiment on X reflects polarized view, with some praising Ukraine's resilience and other criticizing Western involvement. So we still have Ukraine, Russia. We still have Israel, Palestine. And I think that's hopefully cooled off, I believe. Do you see Elon Musk launch the American Party? Elon Musk on July 5th announced the formation of the American Party via X, stating it was to give you back your freedom and threatening to form it as a controversial spending bill passed Congress. The move follows a public falling out with President Trump, with whom Musk had previously spent at least $250 million supporting him in the 2024 election. Musk plans to use the party in the 2026 midterm elections, taking feedback from X users, and has pledged to support primary challengers against Congress members backing the bill, including Representative Thomas Massie. The announcement has sparked debate about the viability of third parties in the U.S. politics, which, of course, we should all want. Trump called it ridiculous and warned of disruption and chaos. Reports indicate that fake filings related to the party with contacts like went snowboarding at yahoo.com and Tesla CFO Tunisia listed, which Musk has denied. This formation requires legal steps like registering with the FEC and gaining ballot access state by state. Excuse me, let's back this up a second. The formation of a new political party requires legal steps like registering with the FEC, gaining ballot access state by state, which is challenging and expensive. Musk's net worth reportedly took a $15 billion hit following the announcement, reflecting market reactions to his political moves. So we got people on the move, and it sounds like a lot of this had to do with the big, beautiful bill being passed. That is why Elon Musk is working on that, which is interesting. So we'll see. We'll see where that ends up. And then, of course, we got Boeing facing strikes. Labor tensions rise on July 8th. So just today, the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, representing 33,000 Boeing workers, announced plans to vote a potential strike if contract talks fail by September. Demands include a 40% wage increase and restoration of pensions cut in 2014. Boeing, already grappling with $60 billion in debt and safety scandals, reported a $1.4 billion loss in Q2. A strike, the strike could halt production of Boeing 737 Maxes, exacerbating supply chain issues and delaying deliveries to airlines. The aerospace's giant struggles have drawn scrutiny from regulators and Congress, with economic ripple effects for suppliers and communities in Washington state. We've got cuts, we've got firings, we've got workers fighting for more money, which is always good. We got absolute national disasters happening around us, seems like more and more often. But I was just in Italy a few weeks ago, okay, and life is good. Life is still good. All right, let's talk about the big, beautiful bill. It passed, obviously, and was signed into law on July 4th by President Donald Trump. Obviously, the bill was contentious, as we just talked about with Elon Musk marking the political party, and a lot of people on both sides not understanding why this was passed, considering a lot of people voted for Trump on the basis of we spend too much money, and now we're spending more. So a lot of people are confused. Why did he do this? Why did this happen? Well, seems like it's just more of the same, people. We got a permanent tax extension of the 2017 Tax Cut and Job Act. Of course, permanent makes permanent the individual tax rates 10, 12, 22, 24, 33, 32, 35, 37%, and doubled standard deductions from the 2017 top Tax Cuts and Job Acts. It increased the standard deduction by an additional $1,000 for individuals, $2,000 for joint filers, and $1,500 for heads of household through 2028. The state and local tax deduction raises the SALT deduction cap from $10,000 to $40,000. This is adjusted annually by 1% for taxpayers earning less than $500,000 from 2025 to 2029, reverting to $10,000 in 2030. Child tax credit, this permanently increases to $2,200, down from $2,500 in the House bill. Creates Trump accounts, which is tax-deferred savings accounts for children with a one-time $1,000 federal deposit for those born between 2025 and 2028. Other tax breaks introduced a temporary deduction for up to $10,000 in car loan interest for the U.S. assembled vehicles with income limits, $100,000 for individuals, $200,000 for joint filers. Allows deductions for up to $25,000 for tip income and $12,500 for overtime pay. Please start paying me in tips. Phasing out for incomes above $150,000 for individuals. This expires in 2028. Increases the pass-through business deduction from 20 to 23%. Restores 100% immediate expensing for business equipment and R&D costs retroactive to January 19, 2025 for manufacturing facilities through 2019. And we have established a federal tax credit for donations to private school scholarship funds, potentially diverting public funds to private schools. This goes back to what I was saying about just having school vouchers and being able to use your money however you see for your children. But I know that gets a lot of backlash, and I understand that. Um, Border security and immigration allocates 170 billion for immigration enforcement. I mean, some of these numbers are just insane. 170 billion for that. 46 billion, excuse me, for border wall construction. 45 billion to expand immigrant detention capacity to 116,000 beds. 30 billion for hiring 10,000 ICE agents, officers training and facility maintenance. 13.5 billion for state and local government grants for immigration enforcement. 1 billion for Department of Defense border operations. It also increases immigration fees, such as raising the appeal fee for immigration judge decisions from $110 to $900. Wow. Policy changes. Restricts eligibility for Medicaid, ACA marketplaces, and SNAP for certain lawful present immigrants. Funds Trump's mass deportation plans, ending the catch and release policy. We also have defense and national security, 150 bill for military enhancements, including shipbuilding and Trump's Golden Dome missile defense system, 25 billion for munitions productions and critical minerals supply chain, 2 billion for Pentagon military intelligence, and 500 million for missile development. Almost 25 billion for U.S. Coast Guard mission readiness. So we're looking to modernize military equipment and priorities. Medicaid cuts. Of course, this is where everyone does not like, which I do agree. Reduces federal Medicaid spending by $900 billion to $1 trillion over 10 years, potentially leaving close to 12 million Americans uninsured by 2034. Imposes work requirements for childless, able-bodied adults, and requires re-enrollment every 6 months with income and residency verifications. I'd have to read more about that, but I don't necessarily. I mean, I guess that makes sense, right? Able-bodied adult. Lower state provider taxes from 6% to 3.5% by 2032, with the freeze for non-ACA expansion states impacting rural hospitals. Includes a $50 billion rural hospital stabilization fund. Prohibits Medicaid funding, from gender-affirming care, and delays CMS rules streamlining enrollment until 2035. Of course, SNAP, food stamps, shifts 5 to 15% of SNAP costs to states with error rates above 6% starting in 2028, potentially affecting 3 to 4.7 million participants in 2034. So it seems like they're trying to go after states that are just not carefully regulating the people that are part of these programs. Expands work requirements to include adults age 55 to 64 and parents with children over 14. It also ends the government gas reduction fund and EV tax credits up to $7,500 by September 2025. Rescinds unobligated Inflation Reduction Act funds for clean energy programs. Of course, it repeals the IRA clean energy incentives, including methane emission royalties, and loan programs for renewable energy. Mandates quarterly oil and gas lease sales on public lands and waters. Expands Arctic National Wildlife Refuge leasing, and reinstates pre-IRA royalty rates. It also allocates $285 million for agricultural trade promotion, $105 million for feral swine eradication through 2031. Education and other. We're providing $12.5 billion to modernize FAA air traffic control systems, which sounds like we desperately need, even though I know we've already put money into that system that has been allocated that has not been acted on, which we've talked about on this podcast in the past. It also adjusts, when it comes to education with Pell Grants, adjust eligibility to include foreign income and adjusted gross income calculations, making some students ineligible, which, does make sense, right? John F. Kennedy Center allocates funds for capital repairs and security through 2029. It also provides $100 million for budget efficiency studies, raising concern about potential fund impoundment. Need to spend 100 million to show you how to save a billion, I guess. So obviously, it increases federal deficits by 3.3 to 3.4 trillion from 2025 to 2034. It temporarily provisions are extended. Deficits could rise by 5 trillion, including interest. Senate Republicans argue the bill reduces deficits by half a trillion using alternative baseline that considers, the TSGA extensions as current policy. Democrats call this magic math. Tax foundation analysis projects 1.2% increase in long-run GDP, but a $4 to $5 trillion reduction in federal tax revenue over 10 years. So it seems like there are some good things in there, but it just listed off a lot of cons. So I'd like to get your guys' input on that. Please leave it in the comments. Feel free to message us wherever you're at. And always, this has been another episode of the St. Louis Podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Please like, review, subscribe, leave a comment, share with a friend, show us some love, show our sponsors some love as well. Half Coast Studios. Visit them if you're in St. Louis, need to record a podcast, just need some help with editing and distribution, need some help with making clips, running ads. Reach out to them, halfcoaststudios.com, or just type in podcast recording studio St. Louis, because they rank number one due to the fact that they're backed by the number one marketing agency, on the planet, Vi Marketing, and of course, Vi Media. So you can visit us at vi.media. You can always feel free to message myself, because if you go over there, you'll probably be talking to me at Vi Media. And as well, we also record, if you want to know stuff about marketing, we record a Marketing Monday episode every single Monday on the Vi Media YouTube channel as well. So you can check us out there if you want to hear me talk more. And that's what we got. Thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.